Hello, and welcome back to another week of the DP World Tour picks and bets. Skylar, Hoke is here. Tom Jacobs is joining me as always. Tom, how we doing?
Yeah, good. Yeah, bit of a tough week last week, I'd say, betting wise. We obviously had a couple of disappointing results ourselves as well. But I mean, Hughes Lawson should have posted a new trade for you, right? Was it a double bogey or triple bogey on the par five that cost you?
Yeah, I think he lost 3 strokes in the final 3 holes.
Yeah.
The fact that you're getting somebody who I viewed as potentially the market leader with an albatross in the week and does not hit the frame was a little bit frustrating. Thurston Lawrence, he had a shot too. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess all aside, none of these guys had a chance at winning from
No,
how
it
well
didn't
Matt
matter, did it?
Baldwin
No.
played. So good on for Baldwin.
That was really good to
Incredible.
see. Yeah, like we do see these stories from time to time, where you remember why we loved the DP World Tour and why, I think it was probably Richard Bland was probably one of them recently where perennially didn't get over the line. I think Matthew Baldwin has had a couple of illnesses and injuries and things like that he's not been able to really make a run of it since turning pro. And 10 years is a long time in golf to not win anything, or maybe even slightly longer than that. So the fact that he's come back and done this at the ripe old age of 37 suggests, and just the way he did it, right? Like, was it 6 strokes in the end? Could have been probably 7 or 8 as well. Just probably battling out down the stretch. So yeah, really good for him.
Yeah, won by touchdown, 7 strokes. And I think it was it Michael Verity? Somebody posted a thread walking through the illness, but also that basically said that he was at a point in life that he wanted to maybe settle down a little bit more with his girlfriend and move forward with their life. And he had one more year of status on the Challenge Tour, and said, okay, I'll give this a go. If it doesn't go my way, I'm out of golf. And turns that into a DP World Tour card, turns that into a win, right? It's life-changing, absolutely.
I think the problem is, guys, that we've probably mentioned this a couple of times now on the show this season. Like, it's so hard even to make a living. It's not hard to make a living, right? But like, it's hard to respectively in golf make a living on the DP World Tour. Like, you have to really be on the PJ Tour now or the other one to really make financial gains. So battling it out on that Challenge Tour last year, I think he put in his Instagram post that he had to finish top 20. That was his goal on the Challenge Tour to get back to the DP World Tour. And look, he's won. And is it going to be a flash in the pan? Potentially, but it doesn't matter, right? That's his status for the next couple of years, and he'll always have that week. No one can take it away from him.
Yep, absolutely. We stay in South Africa for another event here. We have just this event simultaneously the match play is going. A little disappointed in the match play field because we don't get our standard DP World Tour guys. I guess you have Fox and Min Woo and Moronk are all playing, so excited for those guys. But we have
Perez,
that this
Herbert,
week.
if we count
Perez, yes, yep. And then also we roll right into the Masters, right? 2 weeks from now. So we won't have a DP World Tour show until the week after the Masters. I believe we have a stretch of new events to the Euro Tour. So this will be our only show for the next basically month. So just wanted to preface that as we close out. But I'm excited. I like we talk about these type of events, these type of fields when you get into South Africa with the Sunshine co-sanctioned. The Jonsson Workwear Open, what we have this week ahead of us, Tom. Do you have any initial thoughts as we lean in?
So I think my initial thought was last week I went a bit too South African heavy. Would be the first thing I'd say. I think I was just so keen on, like, because it was a links event in South Africa where they'd all played before a couple of times, really. I just felt like they would have that advantage. They didn't. And I think this time I've kind of diversified on that, sort of responded to what I did last week by picking some more European type players, because I certainly think it's a more resort style course. It's another Jack Nicklaus course. I think it's another resort course that's got some water on it, but I don't think it's really going to be much of a difficulty. It's got bunkers everywhere. But last year Sean Norris won at 25 under the Stein City Championship, which was hosted here. So it's going to be a low scoring affair, a bit more of a resort course. I typically think of something like a Ras Al Khaimah type of championship event as something that we could probably expect this week. And yes, there may be a little bit of South African flair to it, if you like, but overall, I think it's just going to be one of those kind of resort courses.
Yeah, what I think was interesting the most to me is when you look at the leaderboards. I mean, Sean Norris was the winner. He putted the lights out last year,
Yeah.
but um, there was conditions. I believe it was pretty damp, which may factor in. But you had the literal longest hitters in the field all performing, right? Burmeister, Matty Schmidt, Tapio. Um, you had Tristan Lawrence, who's decent. You had Wilco up there. James Hart Dupreece was up there, almost I think the first round leader or right in the mix of it. I mean, Nicholas Norgard Muller also played well. Like anybody who could whack it had a shot here. Now, that's still the angle I'm leaning this week for me, at least. It's kind of a tiebreaker, guys. I'm attacking. I know our friend Ben Coley kind of wrote into that as we're going after it, and it'll make a lot of sense with some of the selections the industry is on. But I'm going with that same avenue because to me, I don't want to sound harsh, but I have been harsher on Wilco over times because, he gets uh, publicity for his driving skill, but potentially not the rest of his game. And if he's able to show up at courses along with James Hart Dupreece, who is somebody who is of lesser skill than Wilco, that is such an angle, in my opinion, when you get those two up there both playing well, because it's not typical weeks that we're seeing them on the leaderboards.
Yeah, I think that's to your point. Like I think with someone like Ninaba, you expect him to be there more often than he is, and he hasn't found a consistency he should. But certainly with Dupree's, there's a certain type of event that he can excel in, and when he does, it's very obvious as to why. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with going with that strategy. I think certainly the only evidence we have so far is that that's the way we should go. I think the only slight reservation I would have is that it's only 1 year, so we don't have too much to go on, and that's why I've kind of devised about it a little bit. But I certainly agree that based on what we know, and that's all we can go with, that the longer hitters should prosper.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. We're going to kind of, I don't want to say sprint, but we'll have a quicker show today walking through selections. And I'll make sure to give a shout out to all of those that use our audio formats. You can find us on Daily Fantasy Sports Picks and Bets, The Mix, Mayo Media Network supporting us across all platforms. So we're very thankful for the support and love, rating, reviews, subscribe. Goes a long way for us. Again, last show for basically a month as the DP World Tour takes a break. And then we'll come back with some bigger events then. But let's dive in, Tom. So I know for us, we have, I think it's my first selection. I guess it's a second selection overall on the board, but we do go into the 40s for our first selections. I think yours we'll start with because he was very eye-catching last week. Just been a steady golfer as can be over the last year, right?
Yeah.
So why are you landed here with your first pick?
Yeah, so Matthew Pavon, I think he's slightly under 40 to 1. I think 35 to 1 might be the best price. But he was 9th, 6th, 33rd, and 8th in his last 4 starts. And when I look at it, like the 33rd as well could have been a lot better. He was 9th at the halfway stage and 11th still going into Sunday. And when you look at last week, he was 2nd in ball striking, and that came from being 15th in driving accuracy, 6th in distance, and 2nd in greens and regulations, which is exactly what you want. Last year, he was only 48th here, but he was 21st at the halfway stage. And last week, he started with a 73, but then finished 69, 68, 67, which is a really progressive form. And just like driving skill, just as I mentioned earlier, and it was purposeful I mentioned it and dropped it in there, like Razal Kaima's right up his street, Portugal Masters right up his street. And that's the kind of event I expect. One of those really resort-type courses with plenty of birdies. And I think that's where he's going to get his first win. Will it necessarily come in South Africa? Not sure, but I think that's the type of course that will suit him. So whilst not the absolute longest, I think he's plenty long enough to succeed in this type of layout.
Yeah, I didn't want to pigeonhole just to, the only bombers, but I think distance is definitely part of the repertoire you're going to need. And it's kind of why I landed on someone that I view similar. I guess I think Pavana view with maybe a level of consistency more and deserving, but 40 to 1 strong price there. And it's where I begin too. And I'm landing on Sammy Valimaki. It's been, I would say, difficult to leave off the card over the last few months because his numbers have kind of floated in this range. I was talking to Bear off in Access this morning. regarding Sammy, and it just feels, results, not even results aside, because the results are there, but like you look at it, right, at the halfway point last week, he's sitting inside the top 10, goes out 74-80 on the weekend. He was 22nd, or he had, 22nd in the event before that, where he was the first round leader, and then he was 11th through 54 holes. He had a second the week before in Thailand, where he was basically inside that top 6 the entire event. If you look back even longer, right, you go into the Abu Dhabi. So we have a Rolex event. He's top 5 through the first round, right? He was battling with Bradbury when it looked to get that win early in the year in South Africa. In Mauritius, he was the 36-hole leader, 4th through 54 holes, right? There's been a lot of leaderboards with Sami Välimäki's name on it. And I don't want to call him long, and I don't want to call him the best putter, because at times he's not, but he has the upside, I think, that parallels with almost anybody in this field. And that's why we bet him at, what was it, the Scottish? And he T20'd the Scottish, or was close to it. Big event. I just think big time. Like, I could see a year from now, Sami Välimäki in the match play. Like, I think that is the type of player he has in him. So I'm willing to go to war with him this week.
And I think, firstly, thanks for correcting my Pavon price. There is actually 40-1 available on him. But with Välimäki, and I liked the parallels you drew with when you were talking about with Pavon, is that Pavon feels a little bit safe and a consistency there. But I think Välimäki's 40-1 because he's more volatile, and the volatility allows him to win potentially. Well, he obviously has won more than Pavon, but also potentially go on and win again. He has those kind of spike weeks. I think he can have the type of weeks where he's the best putter in the field for a round. I think he's the type of person that can go and hit, 16 out of 18 fairways and hit it long. He has that spike capability, and I think that's the best thing about Välimäki, is that trait. Do I think that I think he was maybe slightly overrated before because of the couple of early wins that he got, and it's taken him some time to figure out. But by the same token, we've seen with Kurt Kitayama what those 2 early wins on the DP World Tour can do when you get into the hunt at the PGA Tour. At any point, he could very easily go to a match play and go and win 3-4 matches because he's that type of streaky player. So I do like Välimäki. I do think it's a good course for him. I think he was he 16th here last year, if I remember right, or something around that. 16th, which I think is absolutely fine, and something good to build on this year, because I think he's playing better this time around.
Yep. Definitely excited for him, and very excited for our next selection. I think this one seems to be on a handful of betting cards already today, and I think it makes so much sense that Tom McKibben is ready for a breakthrough. Big opportunity here, big driver. Sell us even more on him.
Yeah, so for me, with Tom McKibben, where has he played the best this season? It's been in South Africa. I think we maybe referenced it last week. Certainly did on the Lost Words things. That's just where he's played his best golf so far. And although it wasn't on our betting cards last week, and although nothing actually came of it in the sense that like we feel like we missed out because he didn't place, I do think he's more than capable of doing so. And I just think having that wide open layout, because he is probably a longer hitter than he's maybe given credit for at the moment, and that's certainly a strength of his game. He always gets the kind of comparisons to Rory McIlroy because of where he's from and the golf course he's come from. And I don't think we should necessarily be carried away like that. But by the same token, like they draw a lot of parallels in terms of their starts, their careers, and he's so young, and he's shown that he's a little bit green at times. But I think that kind of schooling on the Challenge Tour last year was great, and I think the consistency that he showed in South Africa at the start of the season is why I want to go back to him after showing a bit of life again last week.
98th at the first round last week, finishes 18th, 65 in round 2, right? You sprinkle in a 25th the week before at Kenya, which I didn't think was the best golf course for him. He was the first round leader, right, 4 events ago in Singapore. He was 4th going into the final round. He's just had a lot. It's hard to build a puzzle for these guys, right? Everything's not just so straightforward all of the time. Yeah. And like when you're able to pick out those upside, and similar to what we said with Välimäki, I just think McKibben possesses that immensely. And that's no shocker to some, and maybe others, you might not get that 45-1 as low of a price there, is what it is. But totally understanding of there, and I don't want to miss that opportunity.
Yeah, I think people would be put off because like he was some really big prices to start off with, especially last season. I think we would tell him like 300 and things like that. But he's got that bank, he's got that experience from last year now. He's got the 4 or 5 events in South Africa and Kenya this season now that we know this kind of suits him. So I think we just learned so much more about him. And I actually think, one, he's already ready to win, and two, the upside is so much worth the 45 to 1 prices available.
That's my first podcast, Denise. I apologize.
I love it.
Yeah. But yes, I agree. Now, I jumped, and I believe we both. When's yours? You're going 55 here, so I'll hit on a couple golfers. Like Thriston was opening in the numbers. He was like 45s at opening. He's down to 35s. Shorter than last week. Probably still maybe in that same consideration of, okay, you just, he might be a different tier of a golfer than some of these other guys. I don't know. I was disappointed it didn't kick on late, but 66s felt so nice last week that if it was 66s again, I'm 100% going back to him. But I was okay skipping this week. Daniel Van Tonder seems to be catching some line after the Sunday. Decent here last week. Pretty good driver of the golf ball. Not the longest. He gets more credit that he's longer than he really might be. But, I mean, also he hasn't hit the board near as much as, like it kind of transitioned to Thriston being that guy when it was DVT in the past. So I can absolutely see the argument. I had to whittle the card down to some, so I skipped him. I also considered Xander Lombard, who is just as frustrating as almost anybody out there. I think he makes a lot of sense. Brandon Stone, another one. Like there is this core group of middle South Africans who play up and down DP World Tour Challenge Tour, who have won big events, who are ball strikers, who hit it long, who I could see absolutely any of them finding their way in. You just kind of either the course history for Stone and Lombard wasn't there as much for me. Van Tonder's recent form, even though the Sunday was good, overarching his last 25 starts, only one top 20 finish, right? So I draw a little bit there. But you're going to the winner of this event last year at this time, who showed some weekend life, I believe it was this past week, Sean Norris, 55 to 1.
So for me, so it was actually, I think, a different event, wasn't it? It was like the Stein City Championship last year rather than this one, because I think the last one was Challenge Tour. But like, for me, when you see a golfer that's won on the golf course and he shot 25 under, then you look at the fact that he was 10th going into the final round last week. It's almost unavoidable. And I think the only reason, I mean, there is a good reason why people would avoid it. Like he's made 7 cuts in a row, but not really pulled up any trees. But he did shoot a fine around 63 in Kenya to finish 20th. And just that sign, just the fact that he was 10th going into the final round last year, just the fact he's going to come back to a golf course where he shot 25 under to win last year. I know he was a bit fortunate. I know Dean Burmeister basically threw away the event last year. But for me, Norris at kind of 55 to 1, knowing what he can do on his golf course and knowing the fact that he's won so many times at, different levels, like in Japan, in Asia, and we've seen so many times recently that Japan form is so good. Yes, it would be his first DP World Tour win, but he's probably won in better fields than some of these anyway. So to me, Sean Norris at 55 to 1, knowing that he's got a little bit of form at the moment, in patches and likes a golf course, I thought was good value.
Yeah, totally makes sense. How deep? I think you're 66s, right? For your last one. I'm going to talk through it here for me and kind of, I guess, pair them in some ways. If I mention McKibben's 54-hole flurry of a finish, there was nobody's that was better, I guess, outside of Baldwin than Jaco Allers. 78 in the opening round, 127, shoots 64, 68, 68 to climb into a third place podium finish last week. So you look at that, and then you're able to look at what he did at this course last year. And last year at this course, he was second after 18 holes. He didn't finish as strong, but someone in there. He was 12th at his last event at the halfway point before a weekend round, kind of throw it away. An 80 to 1 for him. Again, it's hard. Sunshine Tour actually has driving distance data. He is middle of the pack, but he was playing all of these like international series events, right? He was playing, I think 4 of them. Yeah, 21st, 19th, 56th, 7th, miscut T25, so it's 6 of them. He was a winner in April of 2022. Yes, he ended up 16th at this event last year. I just think there's enough, again, that recent flurry of a finish plus familiarity, plus, I mean, some bigger starts. His form until last week wasn't all that promising, but a little life to Nelson Mandela, and then really strong at the STC. Leading into here at 80-1, I am in on. And then a golfer that I really liked last week that just couldn't land on the card for me was Peter Molman. Bowman had come in with 9th, 3rd, 28th, 24th in his, or 14th, even to lead into that. He had a win in October, a couple of the top fives in September. So he had a strong fall and early start to the spring here. I believe he was maybe similar to this number, maybe a little bit lighter last week. He might have gotten even to 66. But he opened last week, and this was the tough part about looking at a lot of golfers. There was some really bad rounds. There was 80s left and right last week. I mean, he opened with a 79. He was in 133rd place. And the next day, he shot 66. So that was the best round of anybody who did not make the cut. So at least to me, happened his last time on the course, at least coming into something where he also, if we pull up the Sunshine Tour stats, is one of the longer guys on the tour. So you have that going for you. You have the form. You have what he did bouncing back on Friday. I like Moolman at 80-1.
Yeah, I think I potentially like Moolman over Ehlers if I had to pick one of the two, just because I think that there's a little bit more consistency there. Obviously, when I know we're talking about the kind of tough opening round, and Ehlers was obviously much better in the end, but I think just the recent kind of 5-6 events or whatever, but you can feel like you can trust him. The only reason I haven't gone to one of these guys is just because I felt like I got hurt last week with just going to South African heavy, and I don't know whether I should just be avoiding that or whether it's, I don't know whether they seem like a good number because they've got that recent form of South Africa and they're not because of their ability comparative to the rest. But the field's not that strong, is it? So yeah, I think they're both fine.
Yep, totally agree with that. Okay, I have 3 more still. I'm rolling 7 because we get deep into the triple digits. You go.
Let me I'll just say a couple of names. I mean, look, I think we've by this time of the podcast established that I quite like Ross Fisher. He's 60-1 or 66-1. I think the belief that I held that he's going to come back and win at some point soon is slowly waning, which means I'm kind of sitting on the fence about him this week. But I do think this is a good golf course for him, as I mentioned. I think the Ras Al Khaimah link and things like that, not the actual course itself, but just the type of scoring I think is going to benefit. And he's shown, some decent life as well, hasn't he, recently? Ball striking was great last week. So I think for me, that's a positive. Do I think that maybe 8th or 9th is potentially his ceiling? Yes, which is why I'm a little bit concerned and potentially won't play him. And then the other one I just kind of looked at, I just think maybe is better suited is kind of first round leader market. But David Rivetto, who just keeps coming out the blocks fast or having a good second round or whatever. But it just keeps popping up. And I think he was another one that actually played pretty well in South Africa at the start of the year, if I'm not mistaken. So I think both of those are potentially worth keeping an eye on, even if I think their winning upside is a little bit low at the moment.
Yeah, 30th and 9th in South Africa to start the year. For me, there was, if I'm making one bet all week long, it's Nick Bockham. Nick Bockham is 125-1. I would say he is the longest of the bunch or the best driver of the graduating class from the Challenge Tour. And he was finally able to break through with a top 20, his first one this past week. And that was after being inside the top 5 at the Magical Kenya Open halfway point. So, we've talked about Bockham on the show in the past. He won, 3 events as an amateur on the Pro Golf Tour. I believe it was 3. And then kicked on through the Challenge Tour and was able to get his card to come up. I think he's the best driver of the bunch. He hits it a mile. He's starting to round into 4 when he's triple digits. And he's somebody, even though he might have not been first top 20 finish. He has been inside the top 20 at some point of each of his last four events. I mean, again, second at the halfway point in Kenya last week when he finished 23rd at the Indian Open. He was 15th after the first round, 51st in Thailand, where he was 17th after the first round. Like, he has definitely been on the leaderboard similar to Valimaki. Hits in a mile, 125 to 1. I am in there for Bachman. I think that is standalone my favorite bet of the week.
Yeah, I think it's very much the same as what I just said about Rivetto. Like, he keeps flashing certain rounds and he has the skill set that you desire, right? I think I was initially put off by his slow start in South Africa start of the year. Like, if you remember back to the start of the season, like, he did struggle, but maybe he was just not in form. He hadn't really got over the kind of break from the Challenge Tour or whatever. Maybe just the kind of newness of the DP World Tour caught him out, right? Whereas now he seems to have settled to your point. First top 20 last week. Can he now go, right, well, I belong here now? Because the top 20 finish is still pretty, I don't want to say momentous, right? But it's still a big deal when you're in your first season or first for a while. So I think that we shouldn't underplay his top 20 last week, and we shouldn't underplay his course suitability. Like, he fits perfectly to what we project is going to be the kind of style of play. So I agree with Backham. I actually think it's worth going to Backham over the two guys previously, and certainly over people like Rivetto and Fisher that I kind of flagged there.
Yeah, I do remember we profiled him for the year and then didn't bet him in the first South Africa event, and he was second in that first round to Bradbury. I was like, oh gosh, here we go. Start of the season, guy that we were high on, didn't bet on first event, is gonna win, and just kind of fall off until I loved the signs last week. All right, two long shots as we close ourselves out here. First one, Ruin Korb. So Ruin Korb is, if you look at, again, this is kind of a sunshine only kind of player, 29, I guess challenge tour, 29 years old for Ruin Korb. Last time out, 47th at the STC. Prior to that, he was 8th on the Sunshine Tour, miscut, and then a T10. So comes into that, and then if you look at it, Sunshine Tour, because he played the first 4 events in the DP World Tour, miscut, 66. He had closed his year 8th, 12th, 6th in a victory in October. So a strong fall for him to his name and his career. He does have 2 professional wins, both of them being here in South Africa on the Sunshine Tour. And he does hit it a mile. If you looked up those stats, he is 9th on the Sunshine Tour in distance. And then last week, if you looked at that form for Ruin Korb, he was so it was 47th, but he was 16th after the first round. He was 19th after 54 holes. So I think you can even go out to a top 20 with somebody like Ruin Korb here, who showed some life last week and has shown that incoming form on the Sunshine Tour. That's one for me. That's 250 to 1. And then the last one is Joshua Lee. Joshua Lee was a Q School grad, 500 to 1 for Joshua Lee. And he really, he's an American golfer. And didn't really get on my radar actually till we mentioned Ben Coley earlier in the show, but Coley tipped him at 1,000 to 1 in South Africa, and mentioned kind of his driving, mentioned that he played well. His best event, and it was his first made cut, was here in South Africa. It was a harder test. That's the only worry. I mean, not the only worry, he's 500 to 1, but one of the things that makes me at least think about it, right, is it was a top 20. He was 17th at the Alfred Dunhill Championship. Outside of that, he has not finished inside the top 40 anywhere else. But you can see, big hitter as an amateur. He had a good kind of prowess from his driver standpoint. He cut his teeth in Latin America for a long time before he made his way over here. Wasn't a bad amateur overall. And he really showed out off the tee plus tee to green. And again, statistics are getting a little, it's frustrating because the game of golf is progressing so much, but we're falling so far behind on the DP World Tour. I don't even know if we can trust these caddies' numbers. John Catlin looks like, I'm sorry to accuse you, but it looks like you're on steroids the last 2 weeks because he's top 10 in driving distance when the guy was never sniffing that. So it's really frustrating as we're losing shot link at courses, right? These stats are caddy generated, so it's been tough. But from what we know of Josh Lee, he can bomb it, has showed some success in South Africa. Africa, and his last time out popped really strong in 2 rounds, tee to green specifically. 500 to 1, you get that out to a top 20. I like that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point about the stats, that's why I'm kind of over the last few weeks lent towards ball striking, just because you can't. I mean, unless they're outright lying, you can't get whether they hit a fairway or a green wrong, right? So if I know they're hitting greens and regulation percentage and fairway percentage, I know they're hitting it accurately. The driving distance is obviously a plus. So I imagine some of them may be converting meters and yardages wrong and yards wrong and things like that. But yeah, it is frustrating on that note, and that's probably why I'm finding it a little bit difficult at the moment in terms of DP World Tour selections. But don't know what my excuse is on the PGA Tour. But I think you're right, and I think that the couple of people that you flagged there, certainly in a field like this. I mean, I know we didn't I think we had one South African in the top 8 last week, but I certainly think that there's opportunity to do it. And just because I'm abandoning the ship in terms of people that play well on the Sunshine Tour doesn't mean others should. So interesting to see how the week unfolds.
Yeah, absolutely. No, very excited. I'll probably end up being first round leader on some of those guys too that we have seen. Because to your point, like a Rivetto and these types, a lot of them have been 18 holes, maybe even 9 holes where they pop up and they can't carry it over on the back 9. But I still believe there's so much, I guess, fluidness between the tours at this when we have the field strengths of it is. I love these weeks. It's tough without ShotLink because that's how we love to sweat. I'm assuming we don't have it this week because we didn't last week. But that's just my favorite way of sweating golf. I know it might be weird to some, but I love to trace it. But with all else aside, it's a big betting opportunity. We didn't have it for Bradbury in the fall. We were on these guys, right? I think we definitely can take advantage of opportunities. And I mean, there's long shots out there. Our best loss for words. We'll go into a little bit deeper with Bradley Todd on it too, and Jason. I mean, there's always ample opportunity on this tour.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the things that's maybe being underplayed that obviously you flagged up at the start of the show is that this is the last event for a while on the DP World Tour. It's the last event in South Africa. Is it until the end of the season? Maybe is the last event in South Africa. I think you got Nedbank right at the end of the season, but it's the last South African event for a very long time. It's the last event full stop for a month. So these players, I don't think that can be underestimated. Like the Tom McKibbins of this world and the Pavons and that are in good form, Samuel Valimaki, this is their last opportunity to show out for a little while. That maybe that just gives me the extra sense of like, okay, they've kind of poodled along in Asia and things like that. First South African event hasn't gone their way. Now they need to hit the form. Now they need to get the win. And I certainly think of all the people that we've kind of spoken about at the start of the season and people that we've flagged as ones to watch, Tom McKibbin for me is a person I wouldn't want to miss out on. So I'm glad that we both aligned on him this week, and hopefully he gets that win.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's run through it one more time. Tom, close out here. Betting card, top to bottom.
Yeah, so I've got Matthew Pavon at 40 to 1, Tom McKibbin at 45 to 1, Sean Norris at 55 to 1, and I think that's probably it for me. I think Fisher is, just not got that winning upside. I don't think at the moment. Famous last words.
Well, don't worry. You only have 3. I have 7, so perfect. Sammy Valimaki, 40 to 1. Tom McKibbin, 45 to 1. Jaco Allers, 80 to 1. Peter Mollman, 80 to 1. Nick Bockham, 125. Ruben Korb, 250 to 1. Joshua Lee, 500 to 1. And I really think those bottom 3, you're going to see them with T10s, T20s, probably on the last 2. And then first round leaders. Bockham comes out quick. We have seen that. And I think when I'm on these type of guys, I love to do first round leaders too. And we don't have, like you said, another month till we bet on any of the events. So we can just add a couple extra on top of guys we already like.
I would say if anyone that I've mentioned, Rivetto, I think I like for a first round leader. He just seems to have those low rounds. So put him in.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, again, thank you all for the support. We'll miss you over the next week. Good luck at the match play, my favorite event on the PGA Tour all year long. Good luck at the Masters. Please reach out if you have questions on DP World Tour or international players. Happy to answer there, but looking forward to a strong finishing week before a little break here in South Africa. Thank you, Tom. As always, my friend.
Thank you very much, Sky, and good luck to everybody.
All right. Take care, guys.